Welcome to the Bullpen. We have in the bullpen Eric Grunor, who is a Christian conservative blogger. We're going to chop it up about CRT, critical race theory, and maybe a few other items if we get to it. Eric, welcome to Indisputable.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I don't want to presume what you believe about CRT. So tell me, what do you think critical race theory is?
Well, it's an interesting subject because so many people talk about CRT in various ways. The media is probably the worst place to get that information. And I appreciate listening to you and watching you over the last couple of weeks. You seem to have a good background. You've explained it well. Some of the things that you've talked about, which I appreciate, is systems in our country. Systems that don't necessarily help the average American citizen. So one of the things I wanted to talk about when you said, let's talk about CRT, is some of the things that you mentioned. Maybe we can delve deeper into that.
Okay.
Because you talk about, and correct me if I'm wrong, because if I've listened to some of your broadcasts, that it should be taught, and it is taught typically on a higher level, maybe at the college level. I think some of the teachers at the high school, middle school level, they may not know exactly what they're doing when they talk about some of our history. But at that higher level, you talk about students, if they learn about our history and learn about the systems that are in place, they can go out into the world and they can help change it. So one of the things I want to ask you is, because you seem to be very knowledgeable about this particular subject, some of the systems you talked about, whether it was criminal justice, I'll add education. I think those are two systems in our nation that are broken.
Yeah.
What are some of your suggestions? Because it's great if we can get the young people out in the world, but I think they have to look to those that have already been in the world for some guidance. Maybe we can talk more about, let's come up with some solutions that can help our nation, not just try to define, do I know this? Do you know that? Where are we at? But I think we have a lot more in common.
Yeah.
So if we talk about the systems that you mentioned, maybe we can come up with some ideas that we can pass on and help fix things.
I appreciate the question, and I'm going to get back to the original thought about defining CRT. It is important to define it, but let me give some remedy, some solution in this space. As you are well aware, because you are a former high school teacher, you know that critical race theory is not an actual discipline as far as a conclusive study. It is literally a question. Any theoretical framework provides a framework so that you can actually have an analysis of your ideas, right? That's how it works. That's
Absolutely.
How all theories in the framework operate. So, for example, when you look at how redlining has been done in the United States of America, or even gentrification, the displacement of Black and brown communities because of tax abatement and policies locally and federally. Well, those things adversely impact one particular group in a significant way, and it does not impact another group in a significant way. Those are policies that have to be examined, because in the critical race theory analysis, what you're looking at is the inequitable outcome. The outcome gives you evidence that something needs to be researched in the background in order to figure out where did the system or institution or the policy get it wrong. And remember, all of this jazz about critical race theory being taught to our kids is really a bunch of smoke, man. And it's completely adversarial to the discipline to actually teach critical race theory to children. And I think that's something you and I will agree on as well. So you have to look at the outcomes that is specific to the actual bias in the policy or the institution. Do you agree?
Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think one of the things that people that have a voice like yourself, definitely have the education in the background and have a following, has the opportunity to talk about the solutions. I mean, you've mentioned some of the things that certainly have caused a lot of people heartache over generations in our country. There's a lot of things that our country has done that has hurt a lot of people, whether it's people of a certain skin color, a certain ethnicity, a lot of things. what I think yourself and others that have the ability to reach the masses need to talk about the solutions so we can have a conversation. About the
solutions.
Well, I know you mentioned redlining. Okay, so let's talk about that.
Let's define it. Hold on, wait a minute. Because I talk about solutions on a regular basis. One of the solutions is making sure that you have intentional efforts to make sure true diversity exists, and not just diversity of thought, but diversity of experience, exposure, environment, and culture. You must have this diversity in the boardroom. You must have this diversity among your ranks in policing. You must have this diversity inside of your state and federal government. You got to have diversity if you want to actually tackle some of the excessive and insane inequitable outcomes that you see throughout the country. But let's be clear about critical race theory, brother, because I don't want you to take away from that point. There is fundamentally an intentional design that says critical race theory is something that it is not. You know that critical race theory is not inherently racist, correct?
I don't think anything, okay, I'll give you that in the sense of, and by itself, the idea, no. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people, the way it's presented is presented in a way that comes across that way.
Let me tell you this, brother. I know people that teach critical race theory. I was taught critical race theory by Dr. Chika Akua. I've been teaching critical race theory for 5 or 6 years at the university before it became a great evil by the Republican Party. Everybody that I know who teaches critical race theory, everyone that I know who has learned critical race theory, they're not racist people, nor do they want to be racist individuals. And what has happened is that state governments have started to pass laws calling it anti-critical race theory laws, but the terminology critical race theory is not even in the context of the statute because they're not passing laws to ban critical race theory. And this is the thing, man, you know this as a former high school teacher. Have you ever taught critical race theory?
No, I have not.
Have you ever known one of your teaching colleagues to teach critical race theory?
Well, what I say is they have taught things from a perspective that I think
that's not critical race theory, brother.
And that's
I get what you're saying.
That's what I said in the very beginning.
That's not CRT. Okay, so why CRT?
We have teachers that are taking their own personal beliefs and biases.
But that's not critical race theory.
Absolutely not.
Listen to me, brother.
You need to help educate some of the teachers.
Well, I do it every day, man. I do it every day.
I understand.
But understand what I'm saying. Why demonize and make a villain out of critical race theory when you just admitted on my show the teachers aren't even teaching that?
But what they're teaching is what they believe it to be.
No, listen, man, 99% of K through 12 educators are not even trained on critical race theory at all. That is not the problem, brother. This was not an issue until Donald Trump told y'all it should be an issue. The critical race theory concept.
Let me ask you a question, sir.
No, hold on. Let me say this. Let me say this, and I get to your question.
Okay.
Eric, I'm gonna say this and get to your question.
All right.
Critical race theory has been around since 1958 informally, and then it was formalized in the 1970s. So you mean to tell me that a theoretical construct that has been around for that long only received this kind of national attention under the presidency of Donald Trump?
I think it happened prior to Donald Trump.
When?
CRT, there was a lot of racial tensions going on in our nation long before Donald Trump got into the office.
Right, but I'm talking about critical race theory, brother. When did critical race theory become a great evil of the Republican Party to start passing laws?
Let me give you an example, and I can say this personally. My son he just finished his freshman year in college, but when thank you. When he was in high school, there were certainly teachers that would bring into the classroom thoughts and ideas and comments that certainly were not what I would consider something a teacher should be bringing into the classroom.
Give us an example.
I'll give you one perfectly. Basically, he had a teacher that said that if you're to the students, if your parents are Republicans, then they're racist. And comments like that are not good.
I know that, man. Let me say this. That's probably true, by the way, but it doesn't belong in K through 12 education. So I give you that. A school teacher coming in and saying, hey, if your people are Republicans, they are racist. That doesn't belong in a curriculum or in a guided educational atmosphere in K through 12. So I give you that. But once again, brother, you're proving my point for me. That's not critical race theory. As a matter of fact, what you just described is adversarial to critical race theory, because critical race theory says do not put any emphasis on individual racist people. Only emphasize systems, policies, structures, and institutions in order to understand unequal outcomes. So what you just described is actually the opposite of CRT. You get what I'm saying, brother?
Well, again, I came on this show because I appreciate the opportunity. And I know that you've talked about this multiple times. So what I was hoping to do is take what you've been saying and talk about some of the things that are solutions to what you consider to be systematic problems in our nation, because that's the only way we're going to make things better. We can talk about there's a problem. There's a problem. Many of us agree.
It starts with education, Eric. It starts with education.
Let's talk about education. Yes. That'd be great. So we can talk about schools. We can talk about school choice. We can talk about teachers that probably are not trained like they should be. There's about 10%, in my opinion, of teachers that shouldn't be in the classroom. Most of them are wonderful people that really care about the children. There's about 10%, as there is in every profession, there probably should not be in the classroom.
Brother, that's a different argument than the argument of equity and equal outcomes in the United States of America. Every profession will have a certain percentage.
So let's talk about equity when it comes to education, because we need to come up with solutions.
And you're right, but listen to me. Every profession, you brought this up, I didn't bring this up. Every profession will have a percentage of people that are bad at their jobs. That's from policing to teaching, even people in your profession. You got a certain percentage of folks that are bad at their job. That still, damn it, that still does not explain why Republicans decided to make criminals out of school teachers who dared to teach actual true history. Go ahead with your next point.
So are you saying that there are teachers then in K through 12 that are teaching critical race theory?
They're teaching true history. True history is not critical race theory. Remember, critical race theory is a theoretical framework.
And that's what I thought you said.
But listen to me, brother. If you're not teaching it from a theoretical framework perspective, which is usually utilized in order to do heavy qualitative and quantitative research, if you're not using it for that purpose, it's not critical race theory. You have school teachers that are teaching the truth about the Constitution, saying that I was 3/5 of a man, and that's a problem. That the Declaration of Independence says that Native Americans are savages, that's a problem. Redlining happening from the 1930s and beyond, that's a problem. The fact that black folks couldn't get insurance coverage in the United States of America until after the 1960s, those are institutional norms, brother.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that.
So what's the problem with teaching that?
Well, shouldn't it be more, let's talk about how we can make things better?
Education first.
Okay, so
stop
how
telling
can we
teachers
improve?
They can't teach real history. That's how you start.
Pointing out the problem is one thing. How do we fix things in our society? We talked about education, you talked about redlining, you talked about equal equality in a company, making sure there's a diverse group. How do we do that? It's been tried, but really hasn't been successful. It's great to point out problems. How do we make things better?
You put a laser sharp emphasis on cultivating true diversity. You review the systemic biases and you implement new policies when you see that policies or institutions have outcomes that create significant disparities against disenfranchised individuals. You have to be thoughtful about the process. When you say we need to come up with a solution, but you want to bypass us having a thoughtful debate about what the problem is, you can never get to the space you want to get to. You're an educator. You know the first thing you have to do in any research study is to define the problem and then define your variables. If you don't define those two things first and accurately, you can never define the conclusion.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think that legislatures and laws can change people's hearts?
They never have, and they're not supposed to. Now, you say that as a point about what? What's your point about that?
Well, we can really define things and we can change laws all we want. But some of the things that aren't going to change are how people, whether it's people of white skin or black skin, Hispanic, how people view each other.
No, man, that's not what I'm trying to change. Let me tell you something, brother. My focus is not on the individual racist. Remember, critical race theory doesn't teach you to focus on the individual racist person. It teaches that the framework, or inside of the framework, that institutions and policies have to be analyzed, that laws have to be analyzed. You have to be critical in your thinking about how they impact particular groups over other groups.
So give me a law right now that we can look at and see what we can do to make it better.
So let's start with education.
Okay.
The loan game is out of control. Education costs too much damn money. Okay, period. Right. So let's say you have an African-American male who gets a loan to go to college. They finish college, and now they have to pay this loan back, right? But they can't get a job. They can't get a job because the economic marketplace is antithetical to their actual economic marketplace reality. They're degreed, they got some experience, they've interned somewhere, but biases exist in the systems, and these systems stop this individual from receiving gainful employment. Now, that is based on statistical data, that black men who are college educated have the hardest times getting jobs in that industry. And then when they finally do get a job, brother, they are typically paid less than their white counterpart, roughly 40 cents less on the dollar on average for doing the same job. So now they get a job later. Now they have accrued interest. When they get a job, they make less, even though they're similarly qualified and have the same degree background. And it's an ecosystem of inequitable outcomes because of that. That's something we could fix pretty quickly.
Okay, how?
You fix it with making sure colleges are free. The free college movement was birthed out of folks that were disenfranchised because of the college game.
Free for everybody.
For everybody, brother. Absolutely, I'm good with that.
Okay,
I'm good for a free, listen, I'm good for a free college option for everybody who would like to seek it. I still think high price universities will still do their thing because a lot of people like the name that's on their degree. And if they can afford it, they will go ahead and they will try to get to that college and pay that money. But there should be a free college option on the table. You disagree?
No, actually, I had a thought a couple of years ago.
But do you agree that a free college option should be on the table?
I think a free community college option would be a good start if the high school student is willing to give to the community while in high school, volunteer, kind of give to the community so the community can give back to them. Volunteer at a senior home, work with underprivileged students, do something for the community.
So brother, listen, man,
and earn it. Earn that.
I want you to come back. Okay. My producers are giving me the rap sign. We got another show starting right now, man. But I do want you to come back. I appreciate you coming on Indisputable, and we will bring you back ASAP, okay?
That sounds good. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. You have a blessed day as well.